Canada is once again scaling back flights to the United States as jet fuel costs soar and as there is lower demand for trips south of the border. The airline is halting or delaying 8 routes starting in the fall. 3 routes from Toronto and Montreal to the Midwest will be canceled for the second winter in a row. In addition, 3 seasonal routes to Florida from Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City will start in December instead of October. Meantime, 2 previously suspended routes from Montreal and Toronto to New York won't be coming back this winter.
Marcia.
What does this latest decision from Air Canada tell you about cross-border demand right now?
It's not coming back as much as they would like it to.
Canada's largest airline just made a decision that will change how millions of people fly this winter. 8 routes are affected at once. Some are disappearing from the schedule completely. Others are being pushed back by 2 full months. The airline says the numbers left it no choice. And behind those numbers sits a story that goes far beyond one company's flight map. Air Canada confirmed this month that it is canceling or delaying 8 routes between Canada and the US starting this fall. The changes hit 3 different parts of the network at the same time. The American Midwest loses service entirely. Florida flights get pushed deeper into winter. And one of the biggest airports in New York drops off the schedule for the entire season. Start with the Midwest. Flights from Montreal to Detroit, Montreal to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Toronto to Indianapolis will stop on October 24th. These 3 routes were originally scheduled to operate daily through the winter. Now they will not operate at all. This marks the 2nd winter in a row that Air Canada has pulled these exact routes. They did not fly last winter either. The airline said it has made a commercial decision not to operate them this winter based on projected demand. Then there is Florida. 3 seasonal routes were supposed to launch in October: Ottawa to Fort Lauderdale, Quebec City to Orlando, Montreal to Palm Beach. All 3 are now delayed until December. That 2-month gap matters because October and November are the months when Canadian snowbirds traditionally begin heading south. Air Canada had planned to stretch the winter sun season into those shoulder months. The bookings did not support it. The airline said the new start dates align closer to peak travel periods, which means the December holiday rush and the deep winter months that follow. The New York changes may be the most striking of all. Air Canada suspended its flights from Toronto and Montreal to John F. Kennedy International Airport on June 1. At the time, the plan was to bring those flights back in late October. That plan is now dead. The JFK routes have been removed from the winter schedule entirely. The airline stated, while we do plan to return to JFK in the future, those services will not resume this winter. JFK is one of the busiest international gateways in the world. Walking away from it for a full season is not a small adjustment. It is a signal. So what is actually driving this? 2 forces are working together, and each one makes the other worse. The first is fuel. Jet fuel prices have exploded since the start of the conflict between the United States and Iran. Oil went from a range of $85 to $90 per barrel to a range of $150 to $200 per barrel. Fuel accounts for as much as a quarter of an airline's operating expenses. When that cost doubles, the math on every single route changes overnight. Air Canada said it plainly back in April. Jet fuel prices have doubled since the start of the Iran conflict, and some lower profitability routes and flights are no longer economic. The airline even warned its own shareholders that higher fuel prices could hurt profits in the second half of the year. The pressure is real enough that one American carrier did not survive it. Budget airline Spirit Airlines has already gone under from the strain. The second force is demand, and the numbers here are stark. Preliminary figures from Statistics Canada show the number of Canadians returning by air from the United States fell 28% over a 2-year window. The count dropped to fewer than 462,000 passengers between May 2024 and this past May. That is not a dip. That is more than a quarter of the market gone. A survey near the end of 2025 found that only 10% of boomer Canadians plan to travel to the United States that winter. 1 year earlier, that figure had been 66% higher. This is the exact demographic that fills those October and November flights to Florida. Put those 2 forces together and the picture becomes clear. Every flight now costs far more to operate. At the same time, far fewer Canadians are willing to sit in the seats. An airline can absorb one of those problems. It cannot absorb both. Flying half-empty planes on double fuel costs is a fast way to burn money. So Air Canada is cutting the weakest routes and concentrating its aircraft on the periods and destinations where demand actually exists. Air Canada is not retreating from New York completely. The airline is shifting rather than leaving. It plans to grow its presence at other New York airports, including new service from Toronto's downtown Billy Bishop Airport with up to 5 daily flights to LaGuardia this winter. Those flights add to existing service from Toronto Pearson to both LaGuardia and Newark. The strategy trades one airport for others where the economics work better. Air Canada is not alone in this. WestJet announced in the spring that it was canceling some of its own summer routes, citing a notable decline in demand. WestJet also said it was considering further capacity adjustments because of higher jet fuel prices. When the two largest airlines in Canada make the same moves for the same reasons, the problem is bigger than any single carrier. For travelers, the fallout is direct. Fewer routes mean fewer options. A trip that once had a non-stop flight may now require a connection, a different airport, or a different travel date. Reduced capacity also tends to push fares upward. When fewer seats are available and fewer airlines compete on a route, the pressure to discount disappears. Passengers heading to Detroit, Minneapolis, or Indianapolis from Montreal and Toronto will need to find new paths entirely this winter. There is one protection worth knowing. Passengers whose flights are canceled or significantly changed have rights under Canada's air passenger protection regulations. Depending on the circumstances, those rules can provide options for rebooking on alternate flights or compensation. Anyone holding a ticket on one of the affected routes should check how the airline plans to handle their booking before October arrives. The broader picture is hard to miss. 2 years ago, the route between Canada and the United States was one of the most reliable travel corridors on the planet. Today, Canada's flag carrier is trimming it season after season. The Midwest cuts are now in their second consecutive winter. JFK sat empty from June and will stay empty through the cold months. Florida service that once started in October now waits until December. Each individual change looks small on its own. Stacked together, they show an airline rebuilding its entire cross-border network around a smaller, later, and more cautious version of Canadian travel to America. The cuts reach the West Coast too. Air Canada is dropping 2 routes out of Vancouver International Airport for the winter season. Flights from Vancouver to Tampa and from Vancouver to Dulles Airport near Washington are coming off the schedule. The Tampa cut stands out because the flight runs nearly 6 hours, and Florida has been the default winter escape for Canadians for decades. None of the cancellations touch the largest American markets or the key business routes. The airline is trimming from the edges first, but the edges keep growing wider with every schedule update.